me specifically for a Lee biography. The bulk of these letters were written before the war, many between Lee's 34th and 49th years. He was 54 when war embraced him. In one of Lee's letters from Mexico, he stated that General Scott had requested his services on the commanding general's staff, thus disposing of the long-held belief that it was a myth that Lee was the only junior officer whom Scott personally asked for. The letters to older women of his family, to whom he revealed his most intimate thoughts, contained fresh insights into Lee during periods in his life when no shadow of a divisive war or any controlling external events lay in his consciousness. Prior to this windfall, when I edited the wartime papers of R.E. Lee with Mr. Lewis H. Mannering in 1960, we discovered that on the war period alone, available Lee correspondence had grown to more than 6,000 items, and new material, pre-war as well as war period, was being collected yearly in various repositories. Since then, the Virginia Historical Society has acquired one collection of 557 items of correspondence restricted to a single period in 1861. Of the pre-war and very few post-war letters that are continually appearing, significant personal letters have been published in the Huntington Library Quarterly and by the Missouri Historical Society. The Huntington letters, written to his wife during the first years of marriage, show Lee as a young lieutenant outraged at the long absences of his lady from her husband. The Missouri Historical Society letters were written to a confidant, Henry Kaiser, who had been Lee's assistant engineer during his work on the Mississippi River at St. Louis, and they reveal some of his personal attitudes with a frankness seldom found in Lee's correspondence. The importance of all the recently uncovered personal and mostly pre-war letters, in juxtaposition to the considerable volume of personal letters already available, has been to emphasize the human aspects of, as they said, a Christian gentleman, whose fate it was to personify not only a society that was destroyed, but an old America of the Federated Republic that was doomed. Of this old America, as reflected through his Virginia environment, Lee towered above all others as the single most perfected product. Indeed, it was the suggestion of a total perfection that has tended to dim Lee with a certain remoteness. Even the die-hard Unionists who renounce Lee as a traitor tend to place his villainy in the abstract. But with contemporary perspectives, sharpened by clinical psychology and philosophical theology, Lee's appearance of perfection can be understood in very modern terms. E.R. Keyes, a fellow cadet at West Point and later a federal general who opposed Lee, explained the young Lee's completeness in terms of his lack of any feelings of inferiority, Keyes's word, or as we would say, the absence of unresolved inner conflicts. He grew in organic wholeness, as a work of art is whole. As if he were a work of art, Lee created himself, in an image implanted by his mother and on a monumental design of moral concepts. Nothing of his life potentialities was wasted or negated. He acted in accordance with his belief that in God all good would be affirmed in God's time. With this eternal view of life, Lee also met the modern precept of being ultimately concerned, though he would have said that to do God's will was his constant concern. Once Lee is viewed as a simple man, whose character grew in proportion to his commitment to the life task he felt God had assigned him, he becomes explainable and very human. He assumes heroic stature because he was a product of an age in which men and women held heroic concepts of life and its meaning. To that extent, he is a product of the past, but a past which is available as an American heritage. Belonging to his own day, embodying the chivalric attitudes of his age and place, Lee's timeless view of timeless values, sustained through all the grief and anxiety and traumatic dislocation endured by him and his people, gives him a particular relevance today. Though this non-definitive biography is presented without footnotes, I do not consider that it is presented without what is called documentation. Footnotes largely serve scholars seeking sources for their own use. No reader, while reading a 1,000-page book, is going to stop to go digging into the official records to behold the reproduction of the form.